Hey everyone, today we are building the doors for the 8x12 shed. We are building a barn style double door on this shed. And before we start, we need to cut off the bottom plate of our walls. These can be cut fairly easy since we didn't nail to the floor. You just cut them off with a sawzall and move them out of the way. And the first thing you need to do is find yourself a flat surface to work on. And there's nothing else better than the actual floor of your shed. And what we do is we measure the height of the wall opening and we cut the studs 3/4 of an inch shorter than the wall opening. And then the width is going to be half inch narrow than the actually opening. But don't worry, if you need help on these measurements, you can check the description below where we're going to have plans for the whole shed, including the plans for these doors. And here's my first tip. I recommend you choosing the best lumber you can get at the lumber store. That's because if it's warped, you're gonna have a bad time straightening out the door later. And if you cannot get good straight lumber, you can grab a scrap piece of lumber and a clamp and clamp them together so it's nice and straight when you start screwing in the middle pieces. I use 2.5-inch exterior screws to screw the 2x4s together. I drive the screw in straight just enough to grab the wood, then I turn at a 50-degree angle and drive the screw home. I go then adding a screw on the other side and I do the same on the back. When you finish here, just check that the joints are nice and flat. Now that you have done one, flip the frame over and do the same thing on the other side. Each side gets 2 screws and make sure it's on a nice and flat surface. And as you see, you frame a square and then you add a block in the middle. Now you may ask, why do I need this block in the middle? Two things. So this block, it's actually keeping these two boards straight, one. And number two, if you have a three hinge door system, you need 3 places for the hinge to screw on. And this block, it's supporting the center hinge on the center of the door. And for this next board, it goes right in the center of the frame. So you measure that. And again, as before, 2 screws on each end. I'm using plywood as a backer for these doors. And for that, I need to cut a section that is 31 by 82 inches. And to screw the boards to the frame, I'm using the same screws I use for the flooring. That way I don't have to buy any new screws. So I start in the corners and just work my way around the door frame, screwing every 8 inches or so. You flip the frame over, and on the back of the shed, you grab that piece of siding that we've been saving since the beginning. You want to square off the siding so the excess it's on the bottom of the door. I nail the siding to the door frame every 8 to 10 inches using siding nails. I ended up with this 1/2-inch lip on the siding, so I used the chalk line to snap it straight and I cut it off with a circular saw. Then it's time to trim out your door. Now, I cut few pieces of trim board here. I use 2 smaller pieces on the bottom and the top. These are 31 inches long. Then I use a longer piece here on the side. That's 76 1/4, I believe. Then another one right here, and the middle piece. This is about 26 inches. Now, this is really important, the middle one, because you're gonna use this to attach your hinge to it. So you really need a center piece. And if you need help with the materials that I use here today, check the description below. I have built a shopping cart right there, ready to check out with all the material I use to build the doors. And also, if you need help with the plans, in the same description, you're going to find a link to the plans for the whole shed. And that's an easy way for you to follow along if you're trying to build a shed yourself. Now I nail the trims to the door. So whether you're using a hammer or a finish nailer, just nail the trims to the door every 8 inches. Time to mount the door. So you need some spacers to keep the door off the floor. Also, you're gonna need some spacers to be used on the side of the door. That way you have a little gap between the door and the door frame. And you're gonna need some shims in case the door is not level. You want to be able to grab a level the door, and shim it off as needed. So I set the door right on top of the 1/2 inch spacer and adjust it into place. You can use a set of clamps to help hold the door in place as you work around it. I start working on the middle hinge first. The screw that comes with the hinge doesn't have a good biting force in my opinion. So first I screw a drywall screw to hold the hinge in place. Then I install all the other screws and replace the drywall screw last. Second hinge to be installed will be the bottom one. And then the last one, it's the top hinge. It's time to try out the new door. A good test to make sure that the door is level and installed correctly is by opening the door and making sure that the door doesn't move after you let it go. The bottom of the door should close against the shed frame, and the top of the door, in a perfect scenario, should line up with the shed. If it doesn't, it's because the frame was warped. In that case, it's probably the lumber. To fix this, you can add threshold on the inside of the door frame. And then I do the same thing with the other door, set it in place and screwing in the hinges. And I use this type of latch. It's similar to what I use on fences. It's pretty inexpensive, really easy to install, and it goes well with this shed. There are many types available. You can check your local hardware store for other options. And now, with the doors built, I'm gonna go ahead and throw a coat of paint on this shed. If you like this video and you want to see the whole build from beginning to end, there's a video right here you can go to. Along with that, I have plans that you can download and follow along during the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.